Hello and welcome to the W with Q. I am your host, Quinn Carey, just coming to you here from my lunch break, actually, at the KHQ station here in Spokane, Washington. Wanted to take a chance here on my lunch to talk some hoops with you guys, talk about the exciting weekend that we had in the WNBA, and also wanted to take this time just to say that I'm going to be pivoting. This show started as Below the Rim Basketball for about 2 whole episodes and about 30 total views. But in kind of going through some analytics, deciding what topics might kind of be more relevant to me, what I'm most into, what I can give the most insight on, have decided to kind of transition into talking about the WNBA, the W, and then women's college hoops as well. So as we get into the college season, we'll get into some women's college hoops. But for right now, we're going to focus mostly on the WNBA for this summer, outside of any major news that we see in the other world of women's hoops and just women's sports around the country. So going to focus primarily on the WNBA here, particularly through the summer, but wanted to let you guys know that. Thanks for being with me. Thanks for sticking through. And if you're watching this, much appreciated. Be sure to like, subscribe, rate, and review. Anything, comments, all of that, any feedback is greatly appreciated. I'll take all I can get and appreciate you being here and just watching this video to begin with. So we'll get into some things here. It was a super exciting WNBA weekend. As I just checked through my notes, the Chicago Sky on Saturday got their first win, taking down Paige Bueckers and the Dallas Wings. So they finally get into the win column. Starting to see some strides there. I think they're still a couple years away. Probably need a few more draft picks to kind of bolster that roster. Maybe get a few free agents in. And then I think as we see Angel Reese develop and Camilla Cardosa hopefully kind of develop into that too big situation that Chicago's hoping for. But I still think they're a little ways away. They're a little raw right now offensively, not totally refined as a team. Have some great players, Courtney Vandersloot, Gonzaga legend from here in Spokane, but just not quite there. But it's good to see them get into that win column, get their first win of the season. And we also had a crazy Sunday game with the Aces and the Seattle Storm. Storm nearly came back from close to down 20. I was watching, just kind of had it on in the background as the Aces were up big and was like, oh, this one's over. And then just kind of watching that second half, and the Seattle really made it a game. It was a super entertaining game going into the nightcap on Sunday this past weekend. So some good things from Seattle. They're starting to find their mojo. We got to see Dominique Malunga kind of play some major minutes and make some really big plays there in the second half. So started to see some flashes from her. She hasn't been playing a ton. I know a lot of Seattle fans are hoping to see a little bit more out of her, but they're going to ease her into it. She's like the female Wemby, as they've called her. So got to give her some time. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to start with those minutes being low like they are right now. But you can already see the immediate impact that she's able to make in some extended time. So super excited for Dominique Malunga, the Seattle Storm. Bright things ahead for them. So really, really good. 2 games there, several other games throughout the weekend. So we capped the weekend here. Again, no games yesterday, which was Monday. The pick back up this afternoon, Tuesday, with a slate of 3 games that we'll talk about later. Talk about some teams, who do I like, just some info on those games. But we ended the weekend on Sunday with a Minnesota Lynx versus Golden State Valkyries nightcap. There was solo standalone game, so I had a chance to watch that. I am in full disclosure, partially because my girlfriend loves the colors of the Valkyries, and then partially because I've been a not lifelong, but longtime Warriors fan since Steph Curry and Klay Thompson kind of got to the Bay. So I've been rooting for the Warriors all these years. I am now a fan of the Golden State Valkyries. That is me and my girlfriend's team that we've decided to go with. So we'll be supporting them from season number 1, see how that goes. They've shown some really promising flashes so far. Not quite getting the job done against the league's top teams, against New York, Minnesota on Sunday, as to be expected. But I think they've shown a lot of fight. Natalie Nakasi doing an awesome job coaching that team, getting them to play super, super hard. After their first game, where they kind of were a little shell-shocked coming out, lost by 20, they've really turned things around, really playing some good basketball and just some impassioned basketball. They are not the most talented overall team. They got some young players, some players that haven't had as much of a chance on other teams that are now here in Golden State. But I'm really impressed with what I've seen from the Valkyries so far and excited about them. But the real story with Sunday night's game is the Minnesota Lynx stay undefeated, move to 7-0. And Napheesa Collier is a freaking bucket, man. I mean, she is looking like an MVP. Obviously, everyone knows this. Got her team to the finals last year. Lost in some controversial calls that ended up going New York's way last year in the finals that swung it to the Liberty. But they were right there, and so you can kind of tell that this Minnesota team seems hungry. There's a reason that they're 7-0. There's a reason that Napheesa Collier is probably playing with a bit of a chip on her shoulder, despite everything that she's accomplished and everything they accomplished last season. just coming out trying to prove that, hey, we're still that team that can make the finals, still can make that deep run. They probably view it as they should have beat the Liberty last year. But I think that they're showing so far through the early part of the season that they are legit, and they are poised to be right back to where they were last season, if not get to the chance to go to the finals and win it this year. I really like what I see from the Lynx so far. And it just does kind of feel like we're on a crash course to getting another Lynx Liberty WNBA finals, another classic matchup that we saw last year. Went the Liberty's way in that decisive Game 5. But in watching, we saw the Liberty blow out the Connecticut Sun by 48 points, which was the second largest win in WNBA history. So they're kind of gelling a little bit. They had a couple rough not rough games, but for their standard, not quite playing where they were at the end of last season, which again is to be expected early on. But they're kind of starting to gel here now, 6, 7, 8 games in, really starting to put it together and starting to wallop on some teams, including a blowout of the Valkyries a couple days ago. Before the Valkyries bounced back for a second game in New York and kept that one much closer. But they are starting to run through some teams like a hot knife through butter. And so I would be shocked if we don't see a Lynx Liberty WNBA finals coming again at the end of this summer. But a lot can change before then, so who the heck knows. But as of right now, early on in the season, it feels like we are on that crash course to getting Minnesota and New York once again. So with that, we move on. The big news around the league, the darling Caitlin Clark is hurt. Obviously, she's injured, out for a couple weeks here. It sounds like it's nothing too serious. Sounds like she should be back here in about 6, 7 days, back to playing. But the Fever have just kind of gone into a tailspin without her, have lost their last 3, lost last 2 without her, including the loss to New York that they had with her before she went out. But now that's 3 in a row. They play again tonight against the Mystics, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but don't sleep on the Mystics tonight, 4-point favorites. Would not be shocked if they won that one outright tonight. So it's been hard for them. Caitlin Clark, obviously a phenomenon. The whole team, they regrouped, they retooled the team this offseason, and it was all focused around her and giving her the best situation, the best chance to win games and make plays, which she's been doing through the early part of her first 3-4 games. A lot of turnovers, but she's been playing. She's been living up to the billing that we all expect from her. But now with the injury, the Fever are starting to go into a tailspin. And then compounding matters. Yesterday, we found out that guard Sophie Cunningham is also going to be out for not a super extended period of time, but a few games here. Also out with an injury, so she's going to miss tonight's game against the Mystics. Once again, why I like to keep that game in mind if you are somebody that's looking to take action on that. But so it's going to be a tough going for Indiana without Clark. The offense just doesn't quite look the same naturally as you have one of the best scorers and best playmakers in the league not there. It's going to be a lot harder to get offense going. They just look a little discombobulated again when your leader, your point guard, is out. That will happen, but they don't quite look like themselves. They're not really quite able to find a way to alleviate that scoring difference without Clark. And this is just a random theory that I had. Saw it a little bit over Twitter as it was going, but just had me thinking that, in the early going of these players' careers, it's always great. You see a lot of teams, including the Fever, who had Aaliyah Boston, continue to struggle, and then we're able to get Caitlin Clark a year or two after that and pair those two together. So you end up with Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston there in Indiana. And part of me thought, obviously, I am not rooting for any sort of injury to Caitlin Clark. I'm not rooting for this to be a long-term thing. But you never know. This could be something that's maybe nagging throughout the year. If she ends up missing any more extended time, we've seen now what the Fever look like without her. And so I think that there is a chance that you see again, in a 13-team league, you could see the Fever kind of ending up towards the bottom of that pack if Caitlin Clark is out for long, extended stretches throughout this year, which, again, nobody is hoping for. I am certainly not hoping for. But it is just the reality when you have these injuries. The WNBA season is short, and so these games are relatively close together. And so if she is unable to come back fully healthy, or if it continues to be something that kind of nags and lingers, we could see a team that was everybody's darling, everyone's maybe dark horse to win the entire WNBA championship because of Clark. We could see them end up towards the bottom of the league. They could end up missing the playoffs with as competitive and as tight as the WNBA is, and getting into that playoffs as hard as that is in this league. So with Clark out, it did get me thinking, if they were all of a sudden to get 3/4 of the way through the season, they're clearly not in playoff contention, let's say. Is it out of the realm of possibility that we see the Fever do kind of a soft tank and maybe go after somebody like AZ Fudd, try and pair her with Caitlin Clark, somebody like that you can get another young star before Caitlin Clark. She's already the comet that's already shooting over us all and already took us by storm as a rookie and through the first couple games of her sophomore season. But I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world if all of a sudden this team had a year where it just wasn't quite right, the team wasn't fully healthy, and then they end up with another top draft pick and are able to add somebody like an AZ Fudd. That would be a pairing that would be absolutely lethal down the road. Obviously, they'd be a bunch of young players that would still have to acclimate themselves, learn, adjust to the league, and get to a certain level. But with Caitlin Clark going into year 3, Aaliyah Boston will have been around for several years at that point. So just something to keep an eye on if Caitlin Clark is out for an extended period of time with this, or if she is out just throughout the year with any sort of reoccurring injury, nagging injury, any sort of missed time. I think this Fever team is maybe not quite as complete and as balanced as everyone hoped and thought going into the season as we're seeing now when Clark is out. And so if that is the case, I could see the Indiana Fever kind of taking not a nosedive, but kind of taking a year where it's, hey, we were expected to make that jump, injuries and whatever else prevented us from keeping that. But the silver lining in that could be you end up with somebody, AZ Fudd might be, you might have to finish last in the league to end up with her, but you never know. Crazier things have happened. So keep your eye on the Fever, potentially not having the season that everyone had hoped, but maybe going into year 3 for Clark, adding somebody like an AZ Fudd or one of those top college prospects coming into the league next year. Now, with all that said, what I want to kind of focus on for the bulk of my time here with you guys, continuing with Caitlin Clark, I know that she's out. I know that she's out for a little bit of time. She hasn't played the last couple games, so we haven't got to see her. But just something I was thinking about, I think it was talked about on some national TV shows, is obviously the Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese dynamic has been blown up in the media from Clark's hard foul from her early in the season. And, it's one of those things where I don't lose too much sleep over that stuff. It was a hard foul. Those two are professionals. They can handle all the backlash and everything that comes with it. But I really think from a media perspective, I think the reason that we're seeing such outrage towards Clark, towards Reese, whichever side of the argument people fall on, there is the racial component that I think a lot of people on the internet, people that are just trying to stir the pot, be on one side or the other, they're causing all sorts of those narratives to fly. But I think the biggest reason that these things are cropping up is because coming into the league, obviously Caitlin Clark has taken the league by storm. She's a comet, like I said earlier. And Angel Reese is an awesome player in her own right, but I don't think that they are on the same level. And I think that we tried to put them prematurely on that same level. They're coming into the WNBA in the same year. They're going to save it. They're going to have that bird magic type rivalry that the WNBA needs and has been waiting for. And so I think that you have the media really trying to push that anytime these two are matched up against each other. Obviously, it's a marquee matchup. However, at this point, Indiana, even despite all their deficiencies and without Clark, they are just a few steps ahead of where the Chicago Sky are. Caitlin Clark is several steps, it feels at this point, ahead of where Angel Reese is. I think Reese is an awesome player. And again, she gets a lot of trash talk and a lot of hate on social media because she doesn't have the most refined offensive game at this point in her career. Newsflash, not a lot of post players in their second year in the pros do. She makes her impact really on the defensive end, rebounding, blocking shots, all of that. And then she has clearly shown some steps in the right direction on the offensive end, but she's just not quite the offensive player that Clark is. And I think we keep putting them in the category of these two are the rivals, these two are the head-to-head. They hate each other, they saw each other in college. And I think they're just on kind of, here's Clark, and here's Angel Reese, just on certain different levels to a certain extent. So I think we've prematurely kind of tried to make that the rivalry that we're going to see going forward, when really what I think is coming into the league right now with Paige Bueckers, as we're seeing, she is also taking the league by storm. Doesn't quite have the same buzz. She obviously has a great following, but Caitlin Clark was just a phenomena in herself. But Paige Bueckers coming in, the Dallas Wings, they're struggling. But she has continued to put up awesome numbers in the top 10 in the league in like 5 major statistical categories already as a rookie. So just doing incredible things, showing as the games have gone on, she's gotten more comfortable, showed that scoring acumen is coming right back to her like it looked at UConn. She's scoring pretty easy. She's getting others involved, and she's just making a total impact. And she is actually what I think Caitlin Clark, they are much more similar in terms of young players. Their impact on the game, how much they mean to their teams, how much they could potentially do in this league as they go, the potential for winning championships, the potential for leading teams to championships. I think those are the two that really could have that rivalry, both in a similar position, same position, both around the same age, coming out at the same time from UConn and Iowa, obviously in the eyes of Americans. So their brands were built coming in, established, and I think that those two have a chance to really go head-to-head. And we haven't had really a chance to see that yet. Hopefully we get a chance when Clark gets healthy and they get matched up, get to see those games, those two head-to-head. But I think Paige Bueckers is really the one we should be keeping an eye on in terms of that rivalry with Caitlin Clark as the years go. I think they've both shown a fiery competitiveness. I think they seem like they have similar personalities. You know, they seem almost quiet and unassuming, but then you see them out on the court and they are fiery. They're barking at refs. Bueckers not as much. Caitlin Clark's on another level of her own on that regard. She's in street clothes on the sideline, hunting down refs, it feels like, and still complaining and giving them a piece of her mind. But just much more similar personalities, I feel like, similar games. And so, you know, I think in head-to-head matchups, as we see throughout the course of this year when they get matched up against each other, hopefully both are healthy and we get to see that. I think you're going to see a ton of playmaking, back and forth scoring from the two, just really awesome shot making. And I think that that's going to make for some great cinema, great TV. And we'll really kind of start to, as we go here over the next couple of years, I think we'll kind of start to be different than the Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese talk, which again, I think is just to no fault of her own. I think is unfair to Angel Reese because again, Caitlin Clark is on another level, both play-wise and also just kind of popularity, notoriety-wise. So I just don't think that is really the rivalry that the media and a lot of people are trying to build up coming out of Iowa and LSU. Again, what we forget about is that LSU team. Well, Iowa had a lot of good players. Kate Martin filled it up last night for the Valkyries, kept them in it in the first half, which was great to see. But LSU has, in the women's basketball front, has just been a powerhouse for a while. And with Kim Mulkey, they have just continued to pump out WNBA player after WNBA player and pro prospects left and right, where Iowa didn't really have that. So despite them two meeting in the national championship game a few years ago, it was really almost kind of like not a full Cinderella run because Iowa was obviously very good. A 1 seed, had Caitlin Clark. But in terms of the players around Clark, it was nowhere near the players around Angel Reese at LSU. So we pitted them against each other, kind of had that rivalry because of their college days. But really, I think Caitlin Clark was doing a lot more even then, despite the fact that, again, Reese is an incredibly impactful player. Obviously won the national championship, has that bragging chip over Clark. But again, I just think it's too early right now to try and make that a rivalry. It's too early in Angel Reese's career. And she's still developing on the offensive side to try and pit her and put her in that situation. But I do think that Bueckers is coming out with kind of that full repertoire. She's just got the whole package. Defense can continue to use a little work, but once again, what second year, first year player doesn't have something like that they need to work on? So I would keep our eyes on the Caitlin Clark, Paige Bueckers, despite not having any sort of previous bad blood, any sort of previous rivalry. I think that's something that we could see in the WNBA for years to come. Those two kind of going head to head, eventually maybe meeting up in some finals, and then the playoffs potentially would be awesome to see. And I think that there could be a little bit of a back and forth over who is that best guard in the league as those two kind of come into their primes. So keep an eye on Paige Bueckers and Caitlin Clark. All right, so now before we wrap everything up here on the W with Q, I just want to talk about tonight, Tuesday, June 3rd's games that we got on the game slate. Give you guys my picks, and as I already have alluded to earlier in the show, the Washington Mystics are our early game as they travel to Indiana. Again, Indiana, the Fever, they just announced that Sophie Cunningham is not going to be available for this game. Obviously, Caitlin Clark's already out. And the Mystics are one of the teams that is not getting talked about enough, but I genuinely think that they have two of the best rookies in the entire league, as they've obviously shown and a lot of people have seen. But in Kiki Iriefan and Sophie Cytron, those two have just been balling. They look like they are like a 4-5 year duo that has been established playing together for forever. And they've only played 6 or 7 games together at this point. And they look like a well-oiled machine. They are right in the mix for Rookie of the Year. Kiki Iriefan is somebody that I would, if you're interested in taking a long shot, I wouldn't be surprised if she, by the end of the season, just because of her consistency, her rebounding, in addition to her scoring and her ability to defend, I wouldn't be surprised if you see her steal kind of the Rookie of the Year from Paige Bueckers, which would be a long shot, but we got a long way to go. With the way things have gone so far early in this season, either one of them I could see getting on that all-rookie team for sure, obviously, potentially stealing that Rookie of the Year. You just never know. But I love Kiki Iriefan, love Sophia Cytron. And so tonight I love the Mystics over the Fever. They're +4, so you get 4 points if you are looking into that world. So I love that number. Also would love them on the money line straight up to take down the Fever. I think that they have a good chance to go to Gainbridge Fieldhouse tonight and get themselves a win from against a depleted Fever team that, again, is kind of in disarray, kind of on a skid, 3-game losing streak currently. And I just don't know if they quite have it figured out what to do without Clark in the lineup. And now you lose another important guard. So I think that the Washington Mystics are a great bet against the Fever tonight. That's the only game that I feel super strongly about in terms of lines and action and all that. You also will have a Phoenix Mercury are visiting the Minnesota Lynx. Lynx, it's a 10.5 point spread, which I don't love taking big numbers if you're going to go into that. But it's either Lynx or bust for me. I'm not getting in front of that freight train that is the Minnesota Lynx right now until I see them kind of hit a midseason kind of skid as teams do. I would not want to be backing any opponents of theirs. The Valkyries kept it super close with them for majority of 2.5 quarters, 3 quarters, and then they just went on a run where they just started knocking down threes. Their defense tightened up, and Nafisa Collier and Courtney Williams do what they do and just get buckets. And it went from a 2-point game to a 9-point game, it felt like, in a minute. And then next thing you know, I'm sitting there, grab a snack, and it's an 18, 19-point game. So it just got away from the Valkyries, and the Lynx can just, in a flash of an eye, their offense is so talented that they can just put up points on you in a flash. And it is hard to keep up with them and score with them for a full 40 minutes. So I don't like either one of those lines, but if you're going to pick one, I am back in the Lynx, not getting in front of that freight train, like I said. And then the nightcap for us tonight, the Dallas Wings, Paige Bueckers, will be visiting the Seattle Storm, who Seattle's also starting to get it going, coming off a tough loss against the Aces, but they were able to really rally in the second half, showed a lot of really, really good things. And so I really like the Seattle Storm -8.5 tonight against the Dallas Wings. And that will conclude my day here with you guys. That's about all I got. We'll check in later in the week. We'll talk about some of these games, revisit some of these picks, see how I did. Again, if you are watching this right now, much, much, much appreciated. Can't express that enough. And please drop a follow, like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Again, this is the W with Q. I'm your host, Quinn Carey, and we'll talk to you guys next time.